Hey, it's Jacob. I'm not a real rock star, but I might loosely be based on the author, who's also not a rock star. Hey, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and tell you about Anchor. If you haven't heard about it, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free. Also, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast, like right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast so it can be heard on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm right now to get started. By the Fire presents A Desperate Soul by Dave Smale. Read for you by the author. Chapter 5. Jacob stood at the edge of his grandma's driveway, staring at the house. His backpack slung over his shoulder, guitar case in hand, and amplifier at his feet. He hesitated to take a step towards it. Every fiber of his being screamed that he should flee. He'd never considered Tilda's house his home, but it was the closest thing he'd known since his parents died. His grandmother had been a parent to him longer than his own parents had. Still, he resented her, though he wasn't particularly sure why. Just 3 months ago, he'd made a dramatic and triumphant exit down this very same driveway and into adulthood. Yet here he stood, on the same patch of concrete, only now he was about to make the walk of shame back to his grandma's front door, while begging her to let him back inside. What if she doesn't? He wondered. The thought was short-lived. Nah, she can't do that. She has to forgive me and let me back inside. Her religion makes her do it. Jacob recalled that on several occasions Tilda had opened her home to complete strangers, young women who'd come to the church looking for help. Tilda would help them get back on their feet, cooking meals, giving them rides, and reading the Bible with them. They'd stay for a few days most of the time, but sometimes they'd stay for months on end. Most displayed no desire to get back on their feet. Even so, Tilda would keep on quote-unquote ministering to them and quote-unquote loving them. Jacob saw the people for what they really were, freeloaders. One woman stole and pawned all of Tilda's jewelry for drug money. Tilda forgave her and allowed her to stay even after the woman cursed her out. It was stupid, Jacob thought, as if Tilda was a glutton for punishment. But if she did it for strangers, then surely she'd do it for him. After all, he was family. Her car was parked in its usual spot. It was in dire need of a wash, which was odd. She usually kept it clean. He noted that, besides a layer of dirt, sap streaks ran down the windshield, and dried pine needles had bunched on top of the wipers. Maybe it's broken down, he thought. Then he noticed weeds throughout her flower beds by the front porch. That was highly unusual. Tilda loved gardening and took good care of her flowers. He turned and examined the lawn. It had been mowed recently. Weird. Well, I guess I should just get this over with already, he thought. Jacob rapped softly on the front door, while a knot formed in his stomach. His heartbeat quickened in anticipation of the door opening. He was definitely not looking forward to this meeting. He waited, but it didn't open. Maybe this was his chance to get away. He contemplated turning, walking down the driveway, and giving adulthood another try. Perhaps he could take his guitar and amplifier down to a local coffee house. He could ask to play there at night for tips. Then, during the day, he could just live in the bushes by the freeway on-ramp. Okay, that's stupid, he thought. Then he knocked a bit louder. He waited 10 seconds. 20. Still no answer. He rang the doorbell. Still no answer after a few more minutes of trying. A variety of scenarios played in his mind. Could she be inside the house but hurt or unconscious? Or worse? No. The neighbors would have noticed. Could she be asleep? It was just after 8 in the morning. No, the knocking in the doorbell would have awoken her. Then it hit him. She's at work. Her car is broken down, so she's been catching a ride with someone. That would explain the car being dirty and the lawn mowed, but the weeds in the flower bed still baffled him. Maybe she'd just gotten busy doing other things. With nothing to do and nowhere else to go for the time being, he decided that he'd walk down to the local gas station to pick up an energy drink. There was a Wawa market only 10 minutes' walk from her house. He knew it well. He used to ride his bike there to get ices in the summertime when he was younger. One of the only things Tilda ever let him do unsupervised. Wawa had everything: gas, a free tire air pump, a full coffee bar, a sub-sandwich shop, and a milkshake machine. Not to mention a snack and drink selection that could rival a supermarket. He shoved his guitar case under Tilda's car and set his amplifier in front of it. He walked to the edge of the driveway and ensured both objects were hidden from street view. He left his backpack by the front door, confident that no one would steal a tattered bag with permanent marker drawings all over it that denoted his favorite bands. 10 minutes later, he entered the convenience store and made a beeline for the refrigerated energy drink section. It was right next to the alcohol. Jacob's attention was immediately drawn to the alluring six-packs and cases of beer. It disturbed him that despite waking this morning under a toilet from yet another drinking binge, and despite it being just after 8 o'clock in the morning, he already had a taste for beer. Of course it didn't matter, since his only connection for buying it was Bean, and that bridge had been burnt to a crisp. He sighed and went back to examining the energy drinks. There were so many to choose from: Rockstar, Rain, Quake, Monster. "Excuse me," a woman's voice said. Jacob instinctively took a step back from the fridge without regarding the woman. He figured he must be in her way, so one step back should be sufficient. He continued to examine the energy drinks. "Excuse me, aren't you Jacob?" she asked. Surprised, he looked over at the woman. His eyes set upon an attractive blonde in a black pantsuit. Obvious office work attire. She was nearly his height, given her thick black wedge shoes. At first, he guessed she was 25 or so, but now that he'd taken a better look, he guessed she was closer to his age. "Yeah?" he said curiously. She stared at him for a couple beats, then crossed her arms. "Do you not remember me?" she said, her gaze sharpening. Uh-oh. He studied her face intently, gulping. She was vaguely familiar. He also remembered her voice from somewhere, it seemed. "Did we meet?" he said, stalling. Where had he seen her? If his mind wasn't so hazy from beer and pot smoke, he might have thought clearly and swiftly. But the time she'd allotted for his memory to work elapsed. Her face twisted. She grunted in disgust and pivoted so fast that a gust of air slapped him in the face. Her wedge heels clacked, quick and loud, against the tile floor as she speed-walked toward the front of the store. Then he smelled it. A light, floral scent. He remembered it from somewhere. But where? His brain was processing at a snail's pace. Wait, he managed, starting after her. The woman stopped just before the exit and whirled to face him. Sheer vitriol painted her face. He halted in his tracks. Her expression made it look as if her green eyes had suddenly turned red and possessed the power to fire lasers. "You don't remember?" she wailed, causing multiple looks from Wawa's early morning customers. "We only slept together!" Jacob's eyes widened. "What? We did?" he thought. "How do I not remember that? Oh no, this is not good." He was speechless. His face flushed. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. He sensed the gazes of a dozen customers, whose first impression of him was now tainted to say the least. The woman glared at him, evidently waiting for an answer. But what could he say? He didn't remember. When did it happen? And where? But there was only one place it could have happened. "At Bean's apartment," he muttered. "Yes, at his apartment," she cried, gesturing wildly with both arms. "Gee, I guess I should feel honored that you at least remember where we did it. You must get around." He shook his head as she turned to leave. Being in a popular band hadn't done much for his love life. Guitar players getting a lot of quote-unquote action turned out to be a myth, as he'd learned. Girls went for the lead singer and moved on to the drummer if they couldn't snag him. Then they moved on to the bassist, who, in Smoke Ring's case, was also the singer. Girls weren't interested in him. That should have helped him remember her, but his preference for weed and beer meant many forgotten nights. The angry woman thrust the double doors open. The metal handles struck either wall with loud bangs. Jacob blinked hard, as if waking from a daze. Embarrassment and indignation simultaneously arose in him. She'd humiliated him in front of a store full of strangers. He darted after her. "Hang on!" he demanded. Jacob caught up to her as she reached her silver coupe. She ignored him, hastily getting in and tossing her purse on the passenger seat. She'd gone into Wawa to buy something, but left empty-handed. The woman fired up the engine as he leaned toward her window. "Hey, hold on!" he called through the glass. But she'd already shifted into reverse and began to back out. Jacob dashed behind her car, causing her to slam on the brakes. He instinctively cursed. The woman rolled down her window, cursed and screamed for him to move. "No way! Not after what you just did to me in there!" Jacob cried. "What I did to you?" "Yeah, look, I'm sorry, but you didn't have to do that." "Get out of the way before I run you over," she cried. "Run me over?" "Yeah, I should." With a surge of courage that surprised even him, Jacob stood still and called her bluff. Was she really willing to run him over and go to prison for murder, all because of a one-night stand gone wrong? He doubted it. She slammed the shifter into park. The driver door flew open. He stayed put. She rocketed from her seat, took 3 steps toward him, and unleashed a flurry of wild face slaps. She simultaneously hurled insults, calling him various anatomic names dealing with waste. Jacob blocked most of the slaps. Frustrated, the woman balled a fist and connected with a haymaker to his left cheek. She was wearing a ring. "Ow!" he screeched, then blasphemed. "Look," he said, "all I was going to tell you was that if it happened at Bean's house, I was probably wasted." She paused her onslaught for a moment. She huffed, clenching her fists, begging for him to provoke another flurry. "I'm really sorry," he said unconvincingly. "I got kicked out of there this morning. But give me a break, will you?" Give you a break? Give you a break? She fumed. Yeah, give me a break. You just humiliated me in there and punched me in the face just now, Jacob said. How dare you? You got me pregnant, you loser! Jacob's jaw dropped as she descended into tears. His hand shot to his temples, and he clasped his long purple hair between his fingers. The world spun as blood drained from his face. He steadied himself on the trunk of her car. I'm so sorry, Jacob managed. You're sorry? She snapped. Hey, wait a minute. That's really not fair. I had no idea you were pregnant until just now. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. I don't want anything from you, she screamed. She sobbed loudly. Then, as if on cue, the memory of that night leapt back into Jacob's mind. The couch. The cute blonde girl from their show, the out-of-place Abercrombie model. She had been wearing their t-shirt. She liked his guitar playing. The perfume. Yes, he remembered her. It was the night I first started living there, wasn't it? Jacob asked. She managed a nod through her sobs. Okay, I remember now. Oh my. Look, I am so sorry. I was out on my own for the first time ever, and, well, you saw how those guys partied. And, wait, couldn't you tell I was drunk and high? She nodded, putting her face in her hands again. Her sobs tapered off. I feel terrible. She looked up at him, frowned, and shook her head. It appeared as if she did not accept his apology or contriteness. Then he remembered why he recognized her perfume. Maybe changing the subject might break the ice, or at least melt it a little. Things couldn't get any worse at this point, so he decided to bring it up. Your perfume, he began. I remember it. So you remember my perfume, but not me? She said, disgusted. Okay, that didn't work, he thought. No, he lied. I don't know the name of it, but... Fancy, she answered. Okay, well, I could swear my mom used to wear that same one. She eyed him incredulously. So I smell like your mother? Is that supposed to be a compliment? Well, yeah, actually. She was a really cool lady, Jacob said. Was? She died when I was 7, he said. Her and my dad. Car crash. Her glare softened, but only for a moment. Sorry, she said flatly. But don't change the subject. You got me pregnant. Then Jacob realized she hadn't said, I'm pregnant. Rather, you got me pregnant. It had been 3 months. Maybe she wasn't still. It was worth a shot. Wait, that was like 3 months ago. Are you still? He asked. She nodded, unconsciously looking down at her belly. She trembled. The news seemed to hit him afresh. He winced. He wanted to ask her why she hadn't told him. At the same time, he wanted to ask her when she planned on telling him. The questions tried to come out of his mouth at the same time. Why, Jacob stammered. Her eyes went wide as Jacob realized how it sounded. He braced himself. Why? Why what? Why am I still pregnant? She said, her voice escalating. No, that's not what I was, he trailed off. 'Cause I wasn't going to make any decisions without letting you know first, she said. He grimaced. What she said didn't quite compute. She knew where he lived. Why not go to Bean's house and tell him? That's not what I was going to ask, he tried to say again. but she anticipated his question and talked over him. I wasn't about to go to Bean's house and tell you the news in front of all your stupid guy friends. They'd probably call me a slut and a liar. I'm already ashamed enough, she finished. Her shaking increased. Wow, he thought. She's probably right. That's exactly what would have happened. So, wow. Okay. What? He panicked, rubbing his temples. Okay, she's still pregnant. She's probably going to keep the baby. Don't panic, Jake, he told himself. You're barely 18, and you're going to be a dad. I have to get to work, she suddenly said, cutting the meeting short. The woman spun and jumped in the car. But wait, can't we, sit down and, I don't know, talk this out? I mean, you're 3 months pregnant. She slammed the door. With my baby, he finished. She peeled her tires, backing out. He barely moved out of the way in time. She stopped, shifted to drive, and glared at him. Don't even worry about it, she said, looking straight ahead instead of at him. I'm going to get it taken care of anyway. Taken care of? What do you mean? He asked. What do you think it means? Are you stupid? She replied. Yeah, I thought we had pretty much established that, Jacob said. His self-effacing quip caused her to hesitate. Listen, he said. I'm sorry things happened the way they did. Can we please talk again, though? I don't even know your name. Shayna. Shayna. A pretty name, he thought. He liked it. In fact, he liked her, despite how this meeting had gone. Jacob felt a connection to her that he couldn't explain. Okay, Shayna, he said, cautiously approaching her window with his hands lifted. And I know you know my first name, so my last name is Jordan. I know. Oh? How? Did I tell you? He asked. You're in a band, remember? I've seen you guys play 5 times. Yeah. Well, I'm not in smoke rings anymore. That happened this morning also, he said. So, Shayna, can I get your number? Could we, talk again soon? We've really got a lot to figure out. Shayna looked away, staring forward. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. After a moment's hesitation, she answered, No! Shayna floored the gas pedal, speeding away. Jacob stared after her, his arms outstretched, as if to say, What in the world just happened? You've been listening to By the Fire. Hey, tell us what you think. Leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you download your podcasts. Or send me an email. info@davesmail.com. info@davesmale.com. Thank you so much for listening. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental.